complete it! Gotta defeat it! It's comics year after year. Supreme comic book leader! Fight for justice that is blind. An advocate! Now to turn it air! With the awesome power of his mind. He speaks for the devil in red!
This is the Fan Without Fear Completist Retrospective. My name is Nick, the Fan Without Fear. Let's take a look at what's on our radar for today. Daredevil number 3, The Owl, Ominous Overlord of Crime. I'm really excited to talk about today's comic, and I'll tell you the truth, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm just gonna say it. I like the Owl. I know a lot of people don't, and don't get me wrong, the next time we see him in Daredevil number 20 is not one of my favorite stories. But I like the guy. The one criticism I hear over and over again from other readers, they just think he's not a credible threat. And I don't get it. The guy's a financial genius, he's a white-collar criminal, and he hires mafioso thugs. It's perfect Silver Age stuff for me. Let's take a look. By the third issue of Daredevil, the comic was finally starting to stand on its own 2 feet. With The Owl, we have the Man Without Fear's first original supervillain. And even the cover is starting to promote Daredevil as his own attraction. The cover, again by Jack Kirby, is really a lot of fun. There's a damsel in distress, Daredevil is charging into action against gangsters, and a trapdoor has been sprung. But it's unclear if the Daredevil will clear it or not, and the Owl seems to be triggering the trap with imperious disdain from his ornate owl throne. You just don't see this in comics anymore. Our brunette here is Karen Page. I checked the Marvel Unlimited app. They did try to fix the coloring to correct Karen's hair to blonde, but it looks like it may have actually been the original dark lines in the art, which led to using a darker hair color for the cover. Also, the recoloring on Unlimited has put the Owl in the green suit you're probably used to seeing. In the original stories, the Owl wore green and purple. For Silver Age villains, purple and green was as common a color scheme as red and blue is for superheroes. Daredevil number 3 is again the work of Stan Lee and Joe Orlando. If you were here for our last episode, we looked at their last Daredevil story together, which involved shooting Daredevil into space in a rocket. This story is actually crazier than that. This issue opens with our villain, the Owl, meeting with his accountant, which sounds boring when I have to explain it. The accountant has discovered that the Owl has framed him for money laundering and tax evasion. After their meeting, the accountant walks into oncoming traffic in an apparent suicide, which Daredevil arrives too late to prevent. The suicide causes the police to look into the Owl's affairs. Owl is advised to get a lawyer, but is so confident in his own abilities, he makes a show of selecting a law office out of the phone book at random. Coincidence of coincidences, the Birdman happens on an ad for Nelson and Murdoch. Foggy Nelson wisely wants to avoid the case, but Matt insists that they take it. Between the action in this issue, Matt works on solving the problem of hiding his street clothes while dressed as the Sewingen swashbuckler. All he comes up with is rolling a wrinkle-free suit into a bouncing ball, and then later settles on the short-lived shoulder pouch for his costume, which seems to use TARDIS technology to be bigger on the inside. These are both pretty ridiculous and feel as silly as Barry Allen's Ring, without the sense of fun. Since his criminal activity is becoming public knowledge, the Owl drops any pretense and embraces the lifestyle of a super criminal. He retreats to his eyrie, which appears to be a giant spec house he's had built to look like an owl. Now this is where the book goes awesomely crazy. 2 hired thugs, Sad Sam and Ape Horgan, are invited to be guests of the Owl at his eyrie. The newly emerged crime figure requires a test of their abilities. To that end, the owl makes Sad Sam have a pistol duel with him, and then puts Ape Horgun in a cage to wrestle an actual gorilla. After both thugs succeed, the owl proves his dominance by dropping them through a trap door, which leads to a fall on a rock face. To the owl's great amusement, he uses his specially crafted cloak to fly from his balcony and save his new thugs. Just past the halfway point, the owl decides to approach the office of Nelson and Murdoch. Daredevil ambushes the goons, but the owl grabs Karen as a hostage, and Daredevil surrenders. Awesomely, Matt and Karen are put into giant bird cages. The owl refers to them as his guests, just as he did with Sad Sam and Ape Horgun. This will come up for us on this show in the future. The man without fear easily escapes his own cage. Dee swings himself to Karen's cage and bends the bars to let her out. In a genuinely suspenseful action sequence, Daredevil confronts the owl and helps Karen escape. The owl uses a speedboat to make his own escape attempt. Daredevil forces his cane into the boat's propeller, and the boat capsizes. All of the water interferes with Daredevil's super senses, and he is uncertain if the owl has escaped or been killed. Soon the police arrive, since the premise of this story is that the owl was just hanging out at his house and telling people that he is in fact a criminal. A number of goons are arrested from the owl's grounds, and Matt returns to Karen in his street clothes. Karen realizes she must be falling in love with Matt because her blind friend reminds her of Daredevil. It's easy to read these early issues and write these stories off as Saturday morning cartoon stuff. But honestly, these books are much more interesting if you don't do that. Keep in mind, Marvel's continuity is largely unbroken from Fantastic Four #1 in 1961 all the way to at least the start of the upcoming Secret Wars event for the summer of 2015. That means the owl who we meet in this story will go on to be the exact same owl we see involved in mutant drug trafficking in the gritty Daredevil Volume 2. As a completist, I always read these stories in the context of the Marvel Universe as a whole, which is all the difference between looking at the owl and only seeing a white-collar version of the Shredder or Cobra Commander, and instead viewing the character as a self-indulgent psychopath. He manically spends his wealth on owl-themed whimsy and seeks novelty and danger with total indifference to who is hurt. When I read this book, I'm not just seeing a cartoon, but a man who is quite literally insane and wealthy enough and intelligent enough to be truly dangerous. That's the owl. He's a solitary man and an irrepressible force to be reckoned with. But I want to know what you think. Tweet us at fwoofcomics.com, leave a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, always live without fear.